special thank you to Sister Bertha Bangers for creating that wonderful introduction to my new series called Big Ol' Christian Lies, which exposes and corrects the corrupt teachings of corporate Christianity. Last week, Pastors Rod Parsley and Larry Huch sat together to teach that tithing is not just about giving 10% of your annual income to the church, but is about giving as much as you can spare all throughout the year, and that by sowing money to the church, you will reap financial prosperity from God. Their audience is told that if they want to receive a large supernatural harvest of prosperity, they need to sow a corresponding seed and experience the divine multiplication of God that will reap increases and promotions. If we take this teaching to its logical conclusion, poor people are poor because they do not give at least 10% of their income to the Christian church. Rich people are rich because they do. Clearly, that is untrue. The Bible's revelation about as you sow, so shall you reap is not about sowing and reaping money. So, what is it about? There is only one place in Scripture where we learn that God shall not be mocked, and it is with regards to the governance of his righteous justice, or as you sow, so shall you reap. The revelation about reaping what we sow is not about sowing money to religious businesses in order to reap prosperity from God, but is about sowing and reaping the Spirit of God, the Spirit of selfless love, in order to protect, preserve, and magnify the Spirit within us. In the Old Testament, tithing was about bringing the first fruits of one's harvest of meat and or grain to the temple. Each person also tithed a third of a shekel, and parents tithed 5 shekels to redeem their first fruits, meaning their firstborn son. These tithes served to feed and financially support the temple priests, whose job was to protect, preserve, and magnify the presence of the Spirit of God that lived within Solomon's temple inside the Ark of the Covenant. The truth of the matter is that the presence of the Spirit of God has not lived in any man-made temple since 586 BC, which is when the Babylonians destroyed Solomon's temple and the Ark of the Covenant disappeared. In the New Testament, the temple of God is redefined. Scripture reveals that we are the temples of God and instructs us to fill our temples with the Spirit of God by sowing and reaping the Spirit. While tithing is never mentioned in the New Testament, we understand that tithing is no longer about supplying food and money to the temple priests that protected the Spirit of God within the literal temple, because the Spirit of God no longer lives in literal temples. It lives within you. You are the temple of the living God. The only way you can protect, preserve, and magnify the Spirit of God within your temple is by sowing and reaping it. Tithing is about sowing and reaping the Spirit of God. It is not about sowing, quote-unquote, God's money to Christian churches in order to reap financial prosperity. What does God need with money? The currency of God is not cash, but spirit. The bottom line for any business, including religious businesses, is financial success. Preachers that teach that, as you sow money to the church, you shall reap prosperity from God, are mocking God's righteous justice in order to serve themselves, in order for them to reap prosperity. While they teach that worldly gain or prosperity is proof of your godliness, Scripture instructs us to withdraw ourselves from such men of corrupt minds. Be not deceived. Tithing is not about pouring out money into literal temples or churches in order to reap financial gains from God, but is entirely about pouring out the Spirit of selfless love upon the world in order to preserve and magnify the Spirit within you, within your temple. Thank you.